Welcome to a pivotal moment in the world of broadcast as we proudly present the Men's Mental Health Show featuring the renowned Larry Mabry in collaboration with the Maassen Group. This essential exploration of men's mental health wouldn't be possible without the invaluable support of Rainier Avenue Radio World. Now, let's dive into this crucial conversation with Larry Mabry and the Maassen Group. Your mental well-being matters. Here's Larry Mabry.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's good to see and hear from everyone here on this March 11th, 2024. And today, I wanted to kind of take a little bit of hiatus and kind of step back and ask some deep questions that as I was coming in today, I was thinking to myself through the course of the day. These are things that I think we all kind of work through in our life. The first question that kind of comes to mind is, what is love? What does that mean? Right. I had a conversation with a friend of mine and they say, how would you define love? And I spoke to 15 different people and got 15 different answers. And I was curious for those individuals out there that are listening, what do you think? How would you define love? What is it? Right? Is it love of a particular thing? Is it love of a particular song? Is it loving yourself? Is it loving certain music? Right. And, I thought to myself, as I interact with people, I noticed that they're pretty much focused on one or two things. It's either love or fear, right? What does love mean to you? And in my 52 years, I would say that my definition has changed quite a bit. When I was in my younger years, I would say I focused more on things outside of myself as far as what love was. Having, I would say back in my 20s, had a lot of property, was really big in real estate, had, nice cars and things. And those things were great. It was fun. And I loved working towards acquiring those things. But I realized, that those were basically just things. Right. And then I had certain relationships that taught me a lot of things about, intimacy, about working with other people. And for me, I would define love is more about self-love, right? What are you doing to show self-love towards self, right? What are some things that you're doing to make sure that you're loving towards self? And that's a tough question because um when you're interacting with people, sometimes people will challenge you on that love front, right? Another question I have too is, what is fear? What is fear? What are you afraid of? Right? What are some things that maybe we shy away from that keep us from acquiring certain things we want, right? And a lot of times it could be something subconscious, right? It could be fear of heights, but maybe it's fear of speaking up. Maybe it's fear of speaking your truth, or maybe it's just fear of reaching your goals, reaching your dreams, reaching your aspirations. Um, a lot of times, at least what I notice is, as we face these things, they become a little bit easier. I wouldn't say always easy, but I would say easier. And I wanted to kind of give a situation that happened earlier on with when I was younger. Um, when I was in college, I would say in my mid 20s, early teens, mid 20s. I went to a college in Michigan. It was called Western Michigan University, and I had a pretty cool professor, Dr. Allison Young. I still remember her. It was a pretty cool person. But anyway, when I was in the college experience, I had migrated from Detroit area, went to a college in Kalamazoo, which is about 2 hours away from where I lived at the time in Michigan. And we were basically in a hallway, or a big hall that had about maybe 150 students. And I was like the only African American student. So it was a very interesting experience. But what I liked about this professor is she was very open minded, and she talked about different perspectives. And she gave the scenario about her being the black sheep of the family. And I remember raising my hand. I said, well, you know what? I gave a scenario and said I was a white sheep of the family. She kind of looked at me. We kind of joked with that. But I bring that up because, love sometimes gets challenged. And that college experience really challenged a lot of my belief systems that I may have thought was probably better. But as I realized and I was confronted with things that kind of forced me to look at things a little differently, some of those things were basically just just cut up, just destroyed. And I would say actually for my betterment, because in Detroit, it was predominantly African American. And when I went to school and college, I met a lot of different cultures, and so that opened up my perspective. But also too, ideals, certain things that I took from family that may or may not been very important, and it helped me change and grow to become a better human. And I learned that at the end of the day, everybody wants to be loved, right? Everyone wants to be respected. Everyone wants to be acknowledged for their belief system, even though it may be different, right? And so in that class, what I did learn that I wanted to kind of bring to the forefront here is, where's your heart, right? Where's your heart? Are you able to just be open to other people, even though they think and see things differently than you? But it starts with you. Are you able to do that with yourself, right? Are you able to be loving and compassionate and understanding with yourself? And that might be a challenge, right? If you grew up in a family where those things were not really supported, or maybe they were frowned upon, or maybe someone just didn't know how to show you those things, right? What is hope? What is hope? And that's really, one of those things that you just have to just kind of like linger on for a period of time and just know that you know that you know that you know, even though you don't know, right? And so I wanted to pose a question to my people listening. What are you feeding through your day-to-day activities? And so let's dive deeper into that. So if you wake up in the day and you jump out of bed and you're excited about what you're doing, why are you excited? Are you in love with what you're doing? What does that look like? Think about it. If you guys want to chime in, feel free to chime in here. Yeah, what are you feeding your daily activities? Like when you wake up, are you excited about your day? Are you supporting people? Are you helping people? Are you doing positive emotional things to yourself? Whether that's working out, whether that's working on certain goals and dreams and aspirations for yourself. What are you doing? Right? Also, when I'm throwing that out there, what about your mental talk, right? Are you tearing yourself down, or are you saying certain things to support yourself? That's really important. Very, very important. Also, what about the interactions you have with other people? Are you tearing them down, right? Because those individuals around you should be supporting you. Now, granted, obviously you might have to deal with some boundaries, but for the most part, the people around you should be supporting you. So what are you saying to those individuals? Are you creating a teamwork type atmosphere? Right? Think about it. So what are you feeding yourself spiritually? If you're caught up in the spiritual realm, what are you feeding yourself emotionally? Are you feeding yourself positive emotional types of well-being types of things? What are you feeding yourself as far as the food? Right? All those things go into your core as far as how you respond and how you grow as a human being. What are you feeding yourself through your daily activities? Right? Also, too, if you notice, and I just want you to do like a self-assessment, right? When you go to bed at night, kind of ask yourself, how did your day go? Was it all negatives? Was it all gossip? Was it all things that happened to you? Were you a victim? And we're not judging these situations, but we're noticing that we might need to change these types of things. So if you notice these types of things are happening to you, you can actually tweak these things by what we talk about looking at those cognitive distortions, right? And as you look at those cognitive distortions, you can reframe those things so that you stop feeding them. So let me give you the scenario. So if you have a particular flame, like a fire you're trying to burn, does anybody know, how do you keep a flame burning? What are the main things you need to give it in order to burn? Does anybody know? It would be oxygen, right? If you feed a spark oxygen, it continues to burn. If you snuff out the oxygen, then how will it continue burning? It can't. So think about that. If you're constantly feeding negative types of things in your life, then you're going to begot negative things. But if you diminish those things, right, then you actually end up starving them. So therefore they can't grow. But the question is, what are you giving positive things to? What are you focusing on in order to create more positive experiences in your life? Okay. Now, a couple things I want to talk about too. Focus. Focus is important. So imagine you're sitting in a car and you're driving And you notice there's some people doing some things on the right of you, and there's some people doing some things on the left of you. You have a choice. Now, I would advise you to maybe pay attention because you don't want what they're doing to impede you and come into your lane on either side. However, you have a choice. The choice. You can slow down to allow them to go ahead of you. You can also speed up, right? So that way they go behind you. Those are all choices, right? The one thing in life that I think people forget is we always have a choice. Choice. And so when you wake up, you have a choice to feed the positive things in your life or to feed those things that aren't so positive in your life. But if you look around and you see people always saying negative things, you think, oh, that's just the way to be. Yeah, it can be, but you can actually communicate some positive things in your life too, right? You may say, well, Larry, how do I do that? Well, I can help you with that. The first thing you would do is to think about something that you're grateful for. So let's go back to that scenario when you woke up. When you wake up in the morning, well, what would you be grateful for? And you may say, well, man, I'm not grateful for anything. Well, let's talk about that. Did you wake up? That's something to be grateful for. Because some people, if you were to call them, they wouldn't even be around because we kind of take life for granted. We assume that we're going to be here the next day, but that's not something guaranteed. So if you basically just say, you know what, I'm thankful that I woke up this morning, that's a one positive type of addition that you're adding to what I call your emotional bank. As you add money, your emotional type of energy to your bank, you're putting deposits in there. So what happens is as you put more deposits in there, it tends to grow, right? So if you take that time to say, you know what, I'm thankful that I'm awake, that I woke up today, that I'm alive, that I'm able-bodied, then all of a sudden you'll notice that you'll see another thing that you're grateful for. Maybe you have a job. It may not be paying the best that you may need, but your bills are being covered. You know, you don't need to worry about your lights being clicked off, right? Maybe you have a place you're staying. A lot of times you may drive and you may see people on the side of the road. They may make those choices, but sometimes they may be in situations where they're kind of forced to be out there, right? And so we're not saying we're better than anyone, but we're acknowledging the gifts that we have, the blessings that we have that other people don't have, right? So let's say, okay, you wake up, you're thankful you wake up, you're thankful that you have a place to stay, then you want something to eat. You go to your cupboard, boom, there's some eggs and there's some bacon and there's some cereal and some other things you want to eat. That's something to be thankful for, right? You may say, what? What do you mean? Well, when you are thankful, when you're giving thanks, what happens is you start to energetically communicate to the universe that you're paying attention to what you're grateful for. And what happens is the universe says, oh, you're starting to acknowledge these little things. So what happens is the universe starts to give you more things to be thankful for. And you may say, really? Yes. At the end of the day, we create our reality. It's all about our focus. Now, a lot of things go on, going back to the scenario when we're driving, a lot of things are going on around us, right? But we don't really pay attention to those things until we stop and we acknowledge those things on our right and our left. But the question is, when we take stock of those things within ourselves and focus on those things, then guess what? Those things will become so important that we really won't have time to focus on the abstractions from the right or to the left. But we have to be grateful for the little things, right? Think about your friendships. Are you grateful for your friends? Do you have a couple people that you know you can call and they'll have your back no matter what? That's a pretty good friendship. That's something to be grateful for. Let's say you take a shower, you get your breakfast, you go outside, boom, you get in your vehicle. That's something to be grateful for. Some people don't have vehicles, right? Something to be grateful for. Start the car, go down the road, you almost get into an accident, but you near miss it. Definitely something to be grateful for. I mentioned this before too, because I know for me, what I started doing was practicing different things for myself and also mention this to my clients, and it makes a big difference. Whenever you get to a stoplight here in Seattle, what I started doing is I call it a gratitude bliss or gratitude blitz. And what you do is when you pull up to a light, make sure it's obviously red. Don't do it when it's green. But anyway, when it's red and you stop, think about what you're grateful for, right? You can think about maybe a compliment that someone gave you. You can think about maybe something nice about somebody else, right? You could think about, some things you're grateful for. And when you do that, you'll notice two things will happen. If you do this for like, I would say like a couple days, you'll notice that light won't be as long. And you'll notice that you'll kind of be more at ease through the traffic, through your day. Things will be a little bit lighter, right? And that's called a gratitude bliss or blitz. Okay. So I recommend you do that. But anyway, I noticed today I was interacting with a couple young students, and the young student just says, "Hey, you know what? I love you." And they were just so excited. And I was like, okay, cool. Now I have to be careful when I communicate to students about that. But I noticed that when they said that, it really touched my heart because the young lady was just being innocent, right? But it helped me go back to when I was a little child. And I just remembered the little child and that individual. And it just touched my heart, right? And so think about things that you could say to other people to show that you appreciate them, right? A lot of times we go throughout our day and we don't really say, you know what? I appreciate you. So those individuals, I want to take the time and say, hey, I appreciate you, right? Daniel, the individuals is always making sure that we have the show on point. Want to say, hey, bro, I appreciate you. There's so many people that go around here and they put in a lot of work for us. And a lot of times, it's good to just kind of give them a pat on the back and say, hey, I see you. Imagine how it makes you feel when people see you, right? That gives you like that positive emotional type of blitz, right? So if you go throughout your day and you see people and you acknowledge people, then guess what? People are going to see and start acknowledging you, right? It's real simple. But you have to start with yourself. What are some daily practices you're doing to actually plug into yourself, right? You have to make sure you plug into yourself every single day. So people may say, hey, how do you do that? Well, there's certain practices that you do. Some people do meditation. Some people do affirmations. Some people play sports. You figure out what works for you. I like to go for walks. The biggest thing is you notice when some negative thoughts are coming into you, do not stay with those thoughts, right? Be mindful of those individuals that are giving you those negative thoughts. We don't judge those individuals, but we can always make what? Make a choice. Make a choice to not be around those individuals or choose something else. Or sometimes we might say, oh, you know what, man, that's cool, whatever, and change the subject. So that way we can let them know that that's not the vibration we want to be on. Okay. All right, cool. Another thing I wanted to bring up too was when we talk about love, think about the interactions that you're having with people. Are they loving interactions? And it doesn't have to be like boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, just like respect, right? That's showing an act of love. Just like common decency is showing an act of love, right? At the end of the day, like I said earlier, we all want to be seen. We all want to be heard, but people can only meet you where you're meeting yourself. And that was like a really, really, really hard pill for me to swallow. But I had an individual teach me that. And so if you're noticing that people are not being fair to you, then you have to have these real conversations with yourself. Are you being fair to yourself? Right? Are you communicating the boundaries that you need to communicate to people, or are you just letting them slide? Well, if you let people slide too often, then they think that they get a pass and they could do whatever they want. Why? Because you haven't communicated what you accept and what you don't accept. So all they know is what you tell them. And it's okay to say, hey, you know what? At this juncture, I'm going to go ahead and, cut this down. Or, you know what? I would appreciate it if you don't do this because it makes me feel this way. It's important to communicate your feelings, and you could do it in a way where it's not disrespectful or it's not volatile or violent. You can still do that, right? Another thing I want to talk about too with feeding is if you're noticing that people are triggering you and you never tell them, whose fault is that? Right? Because sometimes people think that it's okay to trigger people because you've never told them it wasn't. Right? So for those individuals that don't know what a trigger is, let's say someone is saying something that's disrespectful to you, and rather than communicate, hey, I don't really appreciate that, you just let it slide. Then what are you really communicating to them? Going back to what I said, what are you feeding? You're feeding the fact that it's okay for them to not honor you. And it might be okay on one or two occasions, but at some point, if you don't nip things in the bud, what happens? It creates a negative habit. And you're communicating to the universe that, hey, it's okay for people to disrespect me, because what? You're allowing it to go forward. So it's important to definitely let people know, hey, you know what? I appreciate you expressing, and try to find something that you notice that they're expressing that's positive, but let them know, hey, I'm going to ask moving forward that we do it this way. Right. And if you need some help, you can reach out to us here at the Maassen Group. You can hit me up 586-719-5193, or you can reach out to us here on the Rainier Avenue show. Also, too, I want to say, we had a guest a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about some things that really changed his life. And one of the things he mentioned was it's important to just be the best authentic person you could be for yourself. And sometimes you may need support with that, and that's okay too. So we're here to help you with that. Okay. All right. Several weeks ago too, we mentioned as well, those individuals that want to call in or communicate, feel free to reach out to us on, I believe it was Instagram. Are there some questions that you want us to talk about? There's some particular topics that you want us to bring up as far as men's mental health. Feel free to reach out. I noticed a lot of men talked about making sure that they had support. I want to be there for you guys. How to deal with relationships. We could talk about that. We could talk about, how to deal with what you're dealing with at the job, your self-confidence. What does it mean to be a man in 2024? Yeah, that's a tough one, but we could talk about that, right? How do you man up? What does that look like, right? Making sure you're authentic with yourself, right? All right. So a couple things I want to bring up before we come to a close. So Seattle Here and Now is back, and they'll be doing a live episode again Thursdays at 6:00. First guest is the Seattle council member, Tanya Wu. So make sure you guys tune into that. That'll be coming up here this Thursdays at 6:00. And also too, before we close here, Better Together and Living Powerfully guests, Seattle Black Panther, Elmer Dixon will be here. So make sure you guys show some love to the guests here coming up shortly. Just want to kind of give them a plug before we roll out here shortly. So one other thing I want to share with you guys too is, what are you guys doing to show love to yourself? Are you being gentle with yourself? Are you listening to yourself? If people are saying, hey, you know what, you need to do this a little bit different, what are you doing different to support yourself? I remember I had one of my friends say, you know what, Larry, you need to smile more. I said, well, I am smiling. But then I stepped back and I realized that week I was really stressed out and I wasn't really smiling. So I just started smiling more. Just smile, right? And when you smile, even if you kind of force yourself to smile, you'll notice that you can't really be pissed off if you're smiling. If you're smiling, you at some point, you have to kind of like relax the tension a little bit. And then I realized also too that it actually takes more muscles to actually put a frown than a smile. So energetically, you're using more energy to frown as opposed to smiling. So to ask yourself, okay, why we have this chip on our shoulder, or why are things so challenging? Does it have to be? Really? Right? And people may say, well, you know what? My life is hard. I get it. And so I would recommend this week, take one thing to make it simple for you. Take one thing that you can change about yourself. One thing, right? So if you're noticing that you're snapping at people, maybe don't snap at people, right? If you're noticing that certain people, you're not really telling them your boundaries, well, practice telling people your boundaries for that week and see if you notice a change. If you're noticing people are asking you to go certain places and you don't really want to go out because you're just in a funky mood, put yourself in an uncomfortable situation and say, you know what, let me go out, right? And see how you notice that your life changed, because you have to actually kind of challenge yourself with some of these things to show love to yourself when you're so not used to showing love to yourself, right? But why is it important? Well, it's important because if you want love to enter your life, you have to first show people how to love you. Let me say it again. If you want love to enter your life, You have to show people how to love you. But how can you love yourself if you're not loving yourself, right? If you're being mean to yourself, if you're not taking it easy on yourself. Because if you have another relationship, then how do you know how to be or take it easy on them? So I would say practice these things. And I know man to man, it could be tough. I get it. I get it. But if you practice it, you notice it becomes easier and you'll actually notice that your whole life will change for the better. You'll bring different people in your reality and you'll notice that life will be a lot more simpler for you. Things will tend to work out a lot smoother for you. You'll just notice that things will just be a lot different than how it was in the past. Now, sometimes different could be scary. I get it. However, that does not mean that you won't be strong enough to get through it. Okay. So, anyway, real quick, before we leave, I want to say one more again. I want to give a shout out to our next guest. Um, She'll be talking about the Better Together and Living Powerfully guests, uh, Seattle Black Panther Elmer Dixon, um, Dr. Tracy Harrell. So make sure you guys show some love to her. And also, Seattle Here and Now will be back with live episodes again on Thursdays, 6 o'clock, where the first guest will be the Seattle Council member, Tanya Webb. So make sure you guys take a look at that. And also, too, think about next week. I want you guys to kind of chime in and let me know what are some questions that you guys want us to pose so we could talk about to really deal with some mental health issues for men and that we can address some of these concerns so we can be better people together. Okay. So think about that. It could be anything: self-esteem, self-respect. It could be whatever you guys want to talk about. So think about that next week. And I'd like for you guys to contribute. And I'll see you guys next week. You guys have a good one. Deuces.